Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. You know, if you're a parent today, you are navigating an absolute avalanche of information, and frankly, it can be totally overwhelming. If you have ever felt uncertain about vaccinating your child, I want you to know right up front, you are absolutely not alone. In our modern age of social media, being a rational, caring parent means you want the absolute best for your kid, and that naturally means you're going to seek out answers. It is completely normal to feel a bit of hesitation when making medical decisions for the ones you love most. So today, we're going to look closely at the data and the history together to understand the incredible journey of public health.
Okay, let's dive into this. It's a completely fair question, right? If this technology is one of our greatest achievements, why the hesitation? Well, the problem really isn't that people are asking questions. Asking questions is a healthy part of being an informed parent. The real issue we face today is the speed of information. In our hyper-connected world, fear simply spreads way faster than facts. And understanding exactly how that fear travels is the first step to unpacking this entire topic.
Here is exactly what we're up against. On one hand, we have these loud, dramatic internet stories. Every time someone claims a vaccine caused a tragedy, man, that story spreads across social media networks within hours. It grabs our attention. But on the other hand, we have invisible successes. Vaccines are out there quietly preventing millions of illnesses, hospitalizations, and deaths every single year. But a prevented illness doesn't exactly make the evening news. Our brains are hardwired to naturally remember dramatic, frightening events far better than we remember the invisible, silent successes.
Which brings us to a really fascinating historical reality. Vaccines have kind of become victims of their own success. Here's something a lot of people have simply forgotten. Diseases like measles, whooping cough, diphtheria, and polio didn't just disappear because they somehow became weaker over time. No, they disappeared because vaccination became widespread. Many parents today have never had to see a child struggling to breathe because of diphtheria. They've never witnessed the permanent paralysis caused by polio or the truly devastating complications of measles. Because these diseases became so exceptionally rare, many people naturally began believing they were never really dangerous in the first place.
Now comes the most important question. One of the most common arguments against vaccines is, hey, these are just mild childhood illnesses. Why not let children build natural immunity? Well, the hard truth is that natural immunity comes at the cost of natural infection. And infections do not read statistics. While most kids might recover just fine, some will develop pneumonia, some will develop brain inflammation, some are going to suffer lifelong complications, and tragically, some will die.
So the crucial point here is understanding exactly why this medical intervention even exists. Vaccination exists for one reason: to allow the immune system to learn and build defenses without forcing the physical body to pay the full, devastating price of an actual infection. Look, every medical decision involves risk. The real question is never whether risk exists, but which risk is greater. Decades of research involving millions and millions of children consistently show the exact same conclusion. The risk of severe complications from vaccine-preventable diseases is dramatically higher than the tiny, tiny sliver of risk for serious vaccine side effects. This comparison, not emotion, is what evidence-based medicine relies on.
Let's shift gears to Section 2, the immune system. Too many, too soon.
When you look at a tiny newborn baby, they seem so incredibly fragile. And the thought of giving them multiple vaccines at once can feel inherently wrong or just completely overwhelming to a protective parent. It is a totally understandable worry. But here's the surprising part. The immune system does not work the way many of us imagine it does. From the very first day of a baby's life, they aren't living in a sterile bubble. With every single breath they take, every feeding, every touch, every toy they inevitably put in their mouth, and every new person they meet, they are encountering thousands of new bacteria, viruses, and environmental proteins every single day. Their immune system is actually remarkably robust and actively working from day one to process all of these new challenges.
Compared to that massive, constant daily exposure we just talked about, the actual number of immune targets contained in modern vaccines is remarkably small. In fact, get this, today's vaccine schedule exposes children to far fewer immune-stimulating components than vaccines did decades ago, even though today's vaccines protect against significantly more diseases. Receiving several vaccines during one doctor's visit absolutely does not overwhelm a healthy immune system. Instead, it simply reduces stress on the child, means fewer needle injections, lowers the amount of stressful healthcare visits, and crucially, it provides vital protection much sooner.
Moving right along into our third section, demystifying vaccine ingredients, because context is everything.
A lot of parents naturally worry about ingredients they recognize from alarming internet posts, words like formaldehyde, aluminum, and mercury. Let's take formaldehyde. I know, it sounds like a harsh industrial chemical, but your own body naturally produces it every single day as a normal part of your biological metabolism. And this brilliantly illustrates the main point. When we compare it, the tiny amount that might be present in certain vaccines is actually far below the amount that naturally circulates in a baby's bloodstream on any given day, and it is rapidly broken down. In biology, the dose makes all the difference.
Aluminum raises really similar concerns for parents. But the aluminum salts used in some vaccines are not put there as preservatives. They act as an adjuvant, meaning they actively help the immune system recognize the vaccine more effectively. Because of this little boost, it allows for much smaller amounts of vaccine material to generate a much stronger, longer-lasting protection. These amounts are extremely small, they have been studied extensively, and understanding their specific biological role matters far more than just recognizing a scary-sounding chemical name.
There's also this widespread myth out there that suggests simply delaying vaccines until children are older and maybe a bit bigger is somehow safer. But the first year of life is exactly when babies are among the most vulnerable to severe outcomes. The harsh reality is that infectious diseases simply don't wait for your child to get older. Delaying protection just extends the scary window of time where they remain completely unprotected. These schedules were not created arbitrarily. They are carefully, meticulously designed to protect children as early as possible, specifically timing it for when the immune system can produce the strongest and safest response.
I really want to reiterate a core philosophy of this explainer. Questioning medical information is fundamentally healthy. Blind trust is not science. But we've also got to remember that blind fear isn't science either. Good, sound medical decisions come from weighing and comparing the actual evidence, not comparing viral headlines. Now, no medical intervention on Earth is completely free of risk, and vaccines are certainly no exception. But after decades of dedicated research, continuous global monitoring, and literally billions of administered doses, vaccination remains one of the safest and most phenomenally effective public health tools humanity has ever developed.
I want to leave you with this final, truly vital thought. Every single generation faces the exact same choice. Will we learn from history, or are we going to repeat it? Whenever vaccination rates fall, history and even very recent outbreaks show us that these diseases immediately return, not because the vaccine stopped working, but because the viruses themselves never stopped existing. The terrifying diseases we rarely see today are not completely gone. They're simply waiting for enough people to stop protecting themselves. And that, ultimately, is exactly why vaccination still matters so deeply today. What do you think? Thank you so much for joining me to explore this explainer. Keep asking questions, keep looking at the data, and I'll see you next time.